lately I've been talking to a lot of leaders in these large organizations and helping them make sense of this current transformation that's going on. Right? Because it's not just a change. Change happens all the time. This is a fundamental shift. And everything is in transformation right now. We're in this liminal space between what was and isn't anymore and what will be and isn't quite yet. And it's a very stressful state, right, when we transform. And what helps is to have some frameworks, to have some models to kind of understand the situation with. Now, all models are wrong, but some are useful, as George Box said. And, evolution has definitely not been that linear, but sometimes it's helpful to put something in a linear model to kind of get a better sense of what's going on. But when you think about learning in general, right, when you do something for the first time, it's just an initial experiment. You're just doing something for the first time. You might not have systems for it yet. You're just, exploring, right, and seeing if something is there. And if there is, then you begin to repeat it, right? And you make a habit out of it. And eventually you become really good at this habit. You develop some process discipline. You might even have some, defined routine or defined script or standard operating procedure in a business and get really good at something, right? And then you look at it, how you can manage it quantitatively, right? How you can really measure the different aspects of what you're doing. For example, when you start running, right? Initially, you're just running for the first time and it's all new and feels maybe a little awkward and you might have some muscle aches afterwards, right? But then you keep doing it, you keep repeating it, it becomes a habit eventually, right? And then you begin to have your own systems around it, right? You have a specific way of how you do things and how you run every day. And you begin, of course, to then track yourself, right? And look at numbers and say, hey, look, yesterday I was half a minute, slower than I was today. And you begin to, experiment with the numbers around it. And then eventually, when you get really good at that, you might begin to start different experiments. You might get some different running shoes, or you might take a different posture while you run, or experiment with your breath, right? And eventually kind of get a bigger picture of why you're doing this. You might even, run with others or go to marathons. And eventually become a sort of dynamic creation system. You learn how to create new habits in the first place. And we can look at this even from a historical perspective, although, of course, again, that's not been that linear. As anthropologists like David Gerber pointed out lately, it's been much more chaotic and spread all over the place. But even there, we can kind of see that initial experiment was sort of a hunter-gatherer time, right? When we kept running after the mammoths and trying to find the animal, and everything was sort of an experiment. Right? And then as we settled down and got into agriculture, this became repeatable. Right? We learned how to work with the seasons. We learned how to work with different crops or grains and learn how to make things, again and again. And we got really good at it, right? And even begin to then go into the industrial age where we made factories happen, right? We didn't just manufacture a table and build it and it was sort of one-off, so then repeatable, being able to build a table, but we actually used machines to build these tables, right? And made things really fast and at scale. Right? And then something happened in the last century, right around, I would say, the 90s in particular, where we focus on the quantitative management of companies. Right? Partly because of this practice of buying companies and chopping them up and selling them when their balance sheets weren't performing. Right? People start getting really, really focused on balance sheets and numbers and quantitative management. And that also came along with the advent of computers, when we were able to now track what is going on in the organization. When you think about ERPs, right, suddenly we're able to take every part of a process in our business and measure it because we stored the information in a computer and we could run large reports and optimize based on numbers. Now, that's not going to go away. That's always going to be there. We're going to still have KPIs. But when you look at the most advanced companies right now, they went further than this. They learned how to become, learning systems, how to continuously experiment. Right? If you look at the Googles or the Amazons of the world, they're constantly exploring how can we create new customer value, where there are new opportunities for us to do something here. Right? They become learning systems. And eventually, we're going to have to move into an even bigger picture of purpose-driven expansion of integrative solutions, where we build things together, because if we want to address things like sustainability, we can't do this as an individual company. Right? We have to work with our whole ecosystem if we want to, for example, address Scope 3 issues. Right? So we have to actually create ecosystem solutions and eventually become companies that are really good at creating new things all the time, right? Become dynamic creation systems that create meaningful outcomes and actively build the infrastructure of the future, which we'll need, because our current systems are already slowly and sooner than later quickly failing us. So we need to build this whole new world. And where large organizations are at is that they're moving from this age of optimization into this age of expansive experiments, right? From this shift from 4 to 5 in a way is this current threshold. And this requires a completely different kind of leaders as well, right? Because we need different workers and we need different leaders for those workers, right? Before, it was okay that I had a standard operating procedure and some employee could just follow that, right? You had your job description and you fulfilled against it, right? But in an age of AI, the AI can do that much better than most humans, right? And so now I need different kinds of humans. I need self-authoring humans, as my colleague Bob Keane calls them, right? And that's actually only 35%. He said that in a statistic that he ran, 65% of adults are still on a socialized level or below, which means they're still looking for an external authority to validate them. They're still looking for someone to tell them what to do and how to do it. And only 35% of adults are actually on the level where they do this because of their own values, from intrinsic motivation, right? From an internal point, which is what authentic means, right? Autohentis in Greek means self-doing, right? But it's only 35% of the adult population. And currently only 1% are actually capable of self-transforming. But this is what we need from leaders now, right? We need, because any systemic transformation always requires personal transformation. Right? And so right now, we need to update our entire workforce and we need to update our leadership to this next level. And this is a lot of the work that we're doing with companies, is to help them understand that it's not just about skills acquisition, or not just about taking some AI course, right, or sustainability course or something, but to actually fundamentally shift who we be, right, how we show up every day. Right? We require now a self-offering workforce so that they don't get run over by AI, which is already mimicking relational intelligence. Right? It already feels like you can talk to it. Right? And there's even the first person who married their AI because they said it was the best partner they ever had. Right? So this is actually, we already lost in Web 2.0 with social media. We already became little junkies, doom scrolling all day long. We definitely need to have different kinds of people. If we now have an AI who can tailor, their campaigns at us in a level where we're completely lost if we don't act from an internal perspective. Right? So really, this current shift isn't a systemic shift on the one hand, but it requires personal transformation as well. Right? And this is really that vertical development of the individual from from socialized to self-offering, and especially for leaders from self-offering who already were able to, achieve things in their life to become self-transformational. And this is a lot of the work we do at Lumen. So if you're interested in learning more about this and learning more about how you can take your company to a next level where you are becoming a learning system and not just an integrated system, but a learning one, give me a call.